Moth Journal, Paul McMichael, Buchanan, Michigan, February 1989. What will happen to the big silk moths? Will traffic and pollution make it impossible for males to follow the trail of pheromones to the females? Will pesticides kill them? Will their habitats disappear? Will house lights and street lights distract them and make mating impossible? Are they the dinosaurs of the insect world, huge and wonderful but doomed? Maybe Rose is right, and it was a strange way to spend half a year of my life, but I'm glad that I preserved them. Perhaps someday, a long time from now, someone who hasn't seen a Cecropia or a Luna or a Prometheus in the wild will look at ones I've put in cases and feel a glimmer of what I felt in the swamps, in the basement, in the laboratories, before my collecting came to an end and I came back to my life and my future. Then again, who knows? Maybe the moths of Riverside will outlast me. Maybe I'll start another collection in the spring. Maybe Rose will stay. Chapter 16. Funeral. Could you do something for me? Take the moths off the walls of my room and bring them to the river. I want to see them one more time. I'm leaving with Mom tomorrow. Will you tell Abe? Love, Nora. The ultraviolet lamp was still in a small storage room at the back of the garage, a place where Graham still kept many odds and ends from her years of teaching. I pulled the flat sheet off the top of my own bed. I packed a blanket, insect repellent, water, Paul's notebook, my pencils, and a sketch pad. These went into my backpack. The metal specimen container went into the back of my truck. Graham saw from the kitchen window that I was packing up for something. She came out to where my truck was parked. Where are you taking my old field lamp, Peter? It's only for tonight, I promised. I'll put it right back where I found it in the morning. Will you be looking for moths? She asked. It's a perfect night for it, don't you think? Full moon, no wind, rain on the way. But I'm not turning into a moth collector, Graham. I'm just going to the woods to see a few moths and say goodbye to Nora. So she's definitely leaving? She's definitely leaving. I hope she'll come back. I hope so too, Graham said softly. My dear friend's beautiful grandchild. I threw my backpack into the passenger side of my truck and shut the door. Did my mom join a cult when she left here, Graham? Graham stiffened, but her voice remained calm and factual. Some would call it a cult, she said, if by cult you mean an exclusive system of religious attachment. Did somebody come and actually take her away? Not by force, Peter, she said, but she left very suddenly. We didn't actually meet the man she left with. Was he my father? I doubt it, she said, but we don't know for sure. Did Rose know you and Gramps would adopt me? I like to think that she knew, son, but facts remain we never discussed it. And you never heard from her after that? We tried to reach her, but we never heard anything back. Never, Peter. All that year and the year after. And then we accepted things exactly the way they were, and we were grateful. So unspeakably grateful. But what about Paul? I asked. Paul? She repeated. Who told you about Rose and Paul? I didn't think Abe knew. He doesn't know. He doesn't remember. I found out another way. I'll tell you about it sometime, Graham, after I've done a little more research on my own. Wait a minute. What sort of research? Are you questioning my need to conduct research? I asked, challenging her. No, not at all. Research is key. Fact-finding is definitely in order. But this is not what I've come to expect from you. It's a bit of a change. Everybody else is changing, I said. Why not me? Why not you, indeed? I don't want anyone to help me, Graham. I mean it. I want to do this my own way. I won't interfere. I won't speak of it unless I'm spoken to. Nor will Conrad. I looked at the darkening sky. I'd better get going if I'm going to say goodbye to Nora before the rain comes. Carry on, then. Give the girl a hug for me. She gave me a little push toward the cab of my truck, and I was off. It was a perfect night for moths, moonlit and damp with the promise of rain, distant thunder in the wings, a downpour predicted before morning. I drove my truck to a familiar point near the river, the closest to the water I could get and still be surrounded by trees. Then I hoisted my backpack onto my shoulder and carried the metal crate with one hand. The other hand held a flashlight, searching for a spot that would enclose me but still be open enough for my light to be seen from a good distance away. This was my method. This was the night. I was the bait. The combination of moonlight and artificial light, combined with the coming of rain, made small moths gather from far and wide, a multitude of species and sizes, an urgent gathering. They were both disoriented and purposeful, weaving in and out of the light, casting oversized shadows against the stretched sheet until the sheet itself was a kind of puppet show, a shadow box, crazy with movement. After about an hour, I began to sense that she was near. I sat very still. Soon, a tall and wondrous creature came up behind me, put her lips against my cheek, and covered my eyes with her calloused hands. I froze for a long moment, breathing her scent, then stood up and turned around, blocking the light and causing moths to scatter. I wrapped my arms around her and pulled her close and kissed her. "What did you bring me?" Nora asked. "I brought the moths," I said. I hesitated. "And something else. Something that belongs to you. I brought it here to give you, but I'm afraid it will make you sad." "I'm already sad," she said. "Show me." I pulled the notebook out of my backpack and held it up to the light for her so that she could see the front cover. She gasped. "Where did you find this?" "It was stuck in the lid of the moth crate," I explained. "It was there all the time. I discovered it yesterday." "Is it his diary?" she asked. "Actually, it's more about the moths." "Then why would it make me sad?" I couldn't answer her. She folded the notebook against her chest, lowering her head and thinking. Then she handed it back to me. "I can't take it now," she said. "Not now when I'm going back. I need to save all my energy to be with my mom and my sister. I'll read it when I come back." "When will that be?" "I can't say exactly. But this will be the proof that you'll see me again soon. You have my father's notebook. I have to read it. I can't wait to read it. But if reading it will make me sad, then I want you with me when that happens." "Done," I said. "So as you can see, I also brought pencils and a drawing pad. I want to draw your portrait. Sit over there, on that log with your back against the sheet." She settled herself, arranged her legs, fluffed her already wild hair, and posed for me. I drew her with moth shadows circling her head, an orbiting halo. As I drew, she sifted through the moth crate, studying the collection and lifting her head from time to time to gaze at me, her eyes piercing. When she came back to the broken Cecropia, she shook her head sadly. Something in me broke that day, too, like a river washing over me. All the things nobody had ever told me. All the time with him I never had. I might have broken more of them if Abe hadn't been there to calm me down. "Speaking of Abe, can you talk to him before you leave tomorrow?" I asked. "He needs to hear that you don't blame him for the accident." "Oh God, Pete, how could he think that?" "Because he blames himself. Nora, you were so right about him having a secret he couldn't tell us. It was his secret beyond all forgiving," she said. "I had one too." "You know what, Nora? I'm starting to think that everybody has one. I think I know what yours is." This made my breath catch in my throat. I looked up from my drawing, waiting for what she was going to say next. "Yours is about your mom." I began drawing again. "The artist thing. You take after your mom. Did you ever see her again?" "I decided that I'm going to find out more about her," I announced. "I think that's a good idea, Pete, based on certain personal experience." I shrugged. Maybe not. I'm a little afraid what I'll find out," I admitted. "I know what you mean. Kind of like finally finding out about the night my dad died. But you know what? I'm glad I know. And I'm glad Abe was the one who finally told me." I told her about finding Abe and Christina alone together on Abe's porch. She was, of course, thrilled. "Give me details," she begged. "When you saw them, were their heads close together? Were they like face to face? No. Side by side? Were their hands touching?" "Nora, they were away from Riverside, alone together. That's enough of a miracle now." "A miracle," she agreed. "And hey, it might never have happened if my mom hadn't come here and gone so crazy on him." I tore Nora's portrait from the pad with a flourish, walked over to where she was sitting, and held it in front of her eyes for her to admire. "Can I keep it?" she asked. "Please? To remind me of this night?" I gave her the near-empty sketch pad to protect the drawing, and put my pencils and the notebook back into my pack. While I was doing this, Nora came up behind me and wrapped her arms around my waist. Her t-shirt held the smell of grass and campfire and her own unmistakable scent. Her hair was musky and soft, her skin slightly damped. Pheromones. I turned, and her mouth was mine. Distant thunder was growing louder. We both knew we had to get out of the woods soon. "Take me to Abe's," Nora said. "I'll stay with him tonight and call my mom in the morning." I offered to help her take down her campsite. She led me to it, and together we began packing up her equipment. "I've been thinking about the moth collections," she said. Even after I put them up on my wall, I was starting to feel strange about them. They're so dead, Pete. Captured and pinned, and just very, very dead. I think that's how Abe feels about them. He's so soft-hearted. He could never stick a pin in a bug. He wouldn't hurt any living creature. Man, how stupid to choose him to hate him forever. I'm really going to have to work on her about that. We were both leaning against the side of the truck, and I pulled her close and kissed her, and buried my face for a moment in her hair, thinking of how much I was going to miss her, miss the curve of her neck and the soft hollow where her neck met her shoulder. "I'll keep the moths safe for you," I whispered. But she shook her head. "I'm trying to say that I don't want them anymore. I want you to have them back. Do you still want them?" "I think they belong at Riverside. It's what your dad would have wanted. I'll finish drawing them, and then I'll make a display for one of the classrooms. It will give me something else to do while you're gone, so I won't miss you." "It won't work." "Right, I know." "And what about the one I broke?" she asked. "The Cecropia?" "It's not salvageable. It's turning to dusk. We should bury it. Let's bury it in the river." "Now?" "Sure, it won't take long," she said. "The canoe is close by, and it's not raining yet." We opened the crate again. The broken case was right on the top. We pulled out the huge, disintegrating silk moth. Nora separated the frame from the backing, pulled out the remaining pins, and let the moth remains flutter into her open hand. She hurried ahead of me, rushing to beat the storm. We pushed the canoe out in water up to our knees. Nora hopped in, and I followed. I quickly rowed us to the middle of the river while Nora cradled the Cecropia in her hands. The first moth, king of Saturnidae, huge and silent and disappearing, the creature that had started it all. When the first few drops hit us, she let go of the papery corpse. It settled onto the surface of the water, and we watched it float away, raindrops dotting the water around us. "Goodbye, goodbye," Nora called. "You old muddy river, go ahead and miss me." She pulled the second set of oars from the floor of the canoe, and we rowed back to shore, where we ran to the old truck in a deluge. The end.